viewers, and a warm welcome to the show this evening. I am your host, Chef Andy, and very importantly, before I begin, I'm going to begin by introducing the guest with us today. Some of you may have seen her before, but I won't say any more details. I'll not add to that. I will, of course, allow her to say one or two things, and we can proceed.
Thank you, Chef Andy. My name is Megan Muthoni. Yes, I have been here before, and I learnt a lot, and now I'm back. Clearly, it's very, very fun cooking with Chef Andy. I'm an advocate by training, and I am a food lover, so yes, I'm back here to learn how to cook something else.
All right. Now, Megan, before I continue, I'm not sure if you've had a pasta salad in the recent past.
No, actually, no. I do see them served, but I've never really partaken of any, yes.
So are you looking forward to what we're going to be doing today?
Definitely. Looking at the ingredients, I'm really excited at what we are about to make.
Perfect. Now, of course, ladies and gentlemen, before we begin, I will, of course, give you a small tour of the ingredients that are before us. And I'm also going to remind you that the dish of today, very, very simple. It's a farmer's market pasta salad. So this, of course, incorporates just pretty much bits and pieces of what a typical farmer would have available to him freshly from the ground at the market or within his own market or his own farm rather. And basically this is, as I mentioned, a combination of a bit of this and that. So it's got a bit of a sweetness to it, a bit of a saltiness to it. And it's, of course, as you can see from the ingredients, it's also going to be quite a colorful salad. But before I begin, I'll of course take you through the ingredients. So for this recipe, you'll require 1 large white onion. You'll also require some mixed spices, about a tablespoon. This is basically just to coat your chicken in to roast with. You'll also require about 30 milliliters rather of some apple cider vinegar, a tablespoon of some lemon juice, and about 2 tablespoons of some olive oil. This is basically to make your dressing with. You also require some cherry tomatoes, some fresh coriander, about 60 to 70 grams of some lean chicken breast. You'll also require 1 red pepper and 1 courgette or 1 zucchini. You'll also require some fresh peaches, or if you can't find those, you can also use about 2 pieces of some tinned peaches, of course without the juice. You'll also require about half a cup of sweet corn, some salt and black peppercorns to crush, some oil to cook with. You'll also require about, let's say about a small handful of some very, very lean spaghetti. And last but not least, some spring onions, which we're going to be using to incorporate into the salad. But before we begin, I will of course give you this chance to sit back, relax and unwind, and we'll catch you after a very short break. Salt is never added to any spice.
Okay.
Salt is always added on its own. Same cases for such ingredients as black pepper, because of the fact they can be very strong or they can actually be very mild. Right, so now we're going to proceed to take this out. Okay. I'm also going to turn the heat off completely. And of course, while Megan does so, this will of course give us just enough time to begin to cook our pasta. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. If you just tuned in, you haven't missed out on much. We began by introducing the guest of today, Megan. For some of you who may have seen her before, we also introduced the ingredients, and we're going, as I mentioned, we're going to be making something a little different, something that you would pretty much maybe find with a European farmer's kind of a diet, pretty much ingredients that are basically collected fresh from the ground, and ingredients that can actually also be combined into a very, very simple salad. Also to mention, the starch for this dish, we're going to be working with pasta. So for some of you who may of course be wondering where the starch comes in, we're going to be working with some spaghetti for this recipe. You can of course substitute that with some penne pasta, some linguine, tagliatelle. Any particular pasta will go quite well with this recipe. Now before we begin, very important to mention also, we've already got a pot on the go. This has pretty much just been on the heat for a little bit. And I'm also going to be grilling up some vegetables on my cast iron skillet. Right, now just to begin the process, we'll begin by chopping up some of our vegetables, as we of course give the water a bit of time to heat up. So for this particular vegetable, or the zucchini rather, we're going to be slicing this into slightly heavier chunks. This is basically for the fact that we're going to be grilling, and this is of course to make sure that they don't also shrink too much.
Okay.
So for this, you're going to be slicing those into 1/4 of an inch in thickness.
Introducing the mixed spice. So what, you say mixed spice, but I'm wondering what is the content, because a lot of time you hear mixed spice, mixed, but they all end up giving you like a different taste. So I want to know whether there's a particular, like maybe, I don't know, there's a particular maybe content that is actually what makes us a mixed spice. Now, I'll actually give you a breakdown of how the name came to be. Okay. Now, on most occasions, most chefs or cooks don't like to share their spice rub or their recipe. So what we do in advance is we make a little concoction of spices. Okay. Or rather, normally what I would do is, if I have maybe a bit of spices that are left over, maybe you have a bit of, maybe a tablespoon here, a teaspoon there. Okay. What I do is I combine all of them into one particular spice that I know can work with almost everything. Okay. Now, for instance, for the one that we're going to be using here, so this was a simple combination of some paprika, some cayenne pepper, some dried thyme, and some smoked rosemary. Okay. So what I did with the rosemary, I basically allowed it to dry out in the oven, and then I pounded it into a powder. Okay. So basically, as you can get the aroma, as I said, normally it's also to kind of infuse a different flavor. So I would insist, if you're going to be, if you'd like to pretty much have more control over your spices, I would suggest avoid buying the mixed spice and mix it on your own. Okay. So maybe if you, like for instance, on many occasions, you may find that maybe like 5 or 3 spices or 4 spices really combine well. Take detail of them and then mix those into maybe one container, and you can use it for that same dish, and it'll pretty much make sure the standard doesn't change. So for every chef you have a different, or for every cook you have a different combination of what you would be referring to as mixed spice? Exactly, depending of course on what we are making. Okay. So what we try and do as well is also we try and avoid buying spices that are of course pre-mixed. Yeah. Because of the fact that we don't know what were the ratios. You know, there's times that you may want a rub that, or a spice that's not so hot, maybe mild and herby, or you want it very hot and less herbs. So it definitely depends on your palate. Okay. Yeah. All right. Right. So as we continue, I'm also going to begin to peel out our red pepper. So very, very simply proceed by slicing that into quarters. And then right after that, just by using your sharp knife, begin at the end that's narrowest and work your way almost through, but not right across the whole pepper. And that should actually allow for you to get out that very, very bitter membrane from the inside. So very simple. So the reason why I'm not going to be using this is for the fact that the inner core of the pepper is very, very bitter. Okay. And it's also not going to really balance off the flavors, especially for a salad. Okay. Yeah. Right, so once those are done, proceed to discard. And all you're going to do now is proceed to slice those into halves. And proceed to add those into your bowl. Now next up, we're also going to be adding a bit of some white onion. So for this particular one, all you need to do is start the process by peeling your onion and then proceed to slice that into some 1/4 inch chunks as well. So about 3 slices should do for one salad.
And very importantly, for the vegetables that are left over, don't of course always throw everything away.
Yeah.
At times you may of course require some of these beautiful additions maybe into a small dish, or maybe you want to throw them into some rice.
Yeah.
So what I normally do is I leave them as their chunks, and I can actually just chop them up later, fry them, and you can actually freeze them as they are.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Right, so once that's done, we're going to proceed to grill this. So I'm going to proceed to turn our burner on. Where did I throw it here? Go for it. All right. So once your skillet is on, all you're going to do is you're going to proceed to grill your vegetables. So very importantly, always make sure there is no seeds at all.
Okay.
And then what we're going to do is we're going to toss this in a bit of some olive oil and a bit of that spice that we mentioned a little earlier, the mixed spice.
Okay.
So just basically toss those very, very simply in a bowl.
Can you add salt in your mixed spice?
No. What happens is with particular ingredients such as salt, because of the fact that you may encounter situations whereby you don't want too much or you want very little, you may not be able to control salt once it's inside the rub or the mixture. And another thing is you may, of course, want to use maybe the same spices to marinate something.
Yeah.
Now, if you add salt to that mixture, the moment you marinate, you're going to pretty much draw all the water from whatever you mix it with. So that's why we add, salt is never added to any spice.
Okay.
Salt is always added on its own. Same cases for such ingredients as black pepper, because of the fact they can be very strong or they can actually be very mild. And you can never be able to gauge, or you can only be able to know as maybe as close as maybe when your dish is done or when your food is on the table.
Okay.
So we like to leave those completely on the side. Yeah. Right, so once those are tossed in a bit of oil, all you're going to do is proceed to grill this. So I'm going to ask Megan to do that for us. So basically you're going to arrange those onto the pan, but before you continue, very important to make sure that your skillet is also well oiled.
So why olive oil, by the way? Because I know you can eat it, you can have it raw.
Yeah.
And you can pour it on just salad or even food, ready food. So why olive oil? Why are you even grilling with olive oil?
Well, I would say olive oil is a personal favorite ingredient of mine. One of my most, I would consider it one of the best ingredients that I can use in a kitchen.
Okay.
And the beautifulness of olive oil is, I would say it's very diverse. For instance, I actually buy olive oil and I use it on my hair.
Okay.
It's expensive, but I consider it more purer and a little more better, or a little more natural than using store-bought hair oils.
Okay.
And another beautiful thing about olive oil is it can also take up quite a bit of heat on the pan.
Okay.
So it will, of course, also burn at a very high temperature as compared to corn oil. So if you're going to use, for instance, oils that you're going to be using to grill, olive oil is a very good option. So for instance, if I was to use vegetable oil on a pan such as this one, what would happen is it would smoke too quickly.
Okay.
Now olive oil can be able to hold the heat. So that's what I'm saying, it's one of the many diverse ingredients in the kitchen that actually goes beyond its desired requirements.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Any other questions?
No other question
Right.
about olive. But I also know it's healthier.
And it's also the healthiest. It's also the healthiest option, being that it comes from olives. It's of course top on the list of the best oils that you can be able to cook with. Okay. Very low in cholesterol, and it's of course guaranteed and recommended by doctors as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I
Right.
have understood.
Now you understand it.
So when we are grilling, okay, what is the expected result, or rather, what do you want these vegetables to
Now,
look like?
you can see the marks that you already have on that one piece. Yeah. If you can get them all to have the marks just the same, that's all we need them to do.
Oh, okay. So it's not about cooking the vegetables.
It's not just cooking, it's also giving it a different look.
Oh.
So like for instance, if I was to fry this on a very shallow, on a very plain pan or a regular frying pan, I wouldn't be able to get those beautiful char marks.
Yeah.
So this is the same technique we also use in burgers. Okay. Maybe you've gone out and had a burger and it came with the designs. And maybe you also had steak maybe that came with some grill marks on it. So that's why I always insist, if you're going to get this pan, you're pretty much not going to use it for everyday cooking. It's pretty much a pan that I would use on the show, even at home. I would only use it maybe for show. So if you may be grilling vegetables like that and maybe you'll be serving them as they are, it's also a very good alternative pan to do so. And it's the only tool that you can be able to cook with and get the marks in the kitchen. But you can, of course, achieve the same thing if you're doing them maybe on a barbecue outside.
Oh, okay.
So
now I can start to see the marks.
Now you can start to see the marks.
But on the red pepper, what happens because they are a bit...
No, what happens is with the peppers, you can, basically we only need to color them slightly. Okay. Remember, we also need them to be a little crunchy. Yes. So what happens is you'll realize that your peppers will color a little faster, okay. But once you get the charmac of maybe that black coloring on the pepper on each side, the peppers will of course always dominate and they'll actually cook faster. Okay. And the zucchini will maybe take maybe about another extra minute to get the charmacs on both sides. Okay. Yeah.
So in short, what we shall have at the end is that these shall be crunchy.
They'll still be crunchy, yeah. The idea is to keep it crunchy. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. But you know, from our most of our African dishes, or rather let me say the Kenyan dishes, given now I'm referring to when I grew up. Like we consume most of our food when it's well cooked.
When it's pretty much, well,
yes.
the correct term would be overcooked.
Oh, is it overcooked?
Yeah, it's overcooked because of the fact that, well, I believe even for my upbringing, growing up, of course, in Kenya, and of course, basically having my grassroots with Kenyan cuisine, I did, of course, grow to understand the concept once I went into culinary school. I also, before that, believed that a crunchy vegetable meant raw vegetables. Yes. So, of course, with time, I came to understand the idea is basically by not overcooking them, you actually preserve more nutrient. Yeah. And it's actually also a little more interesting to consume.
To consume.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you do with, you know, most of our taste buds, or rather most of us, the way we are used to consuming food as it's overcooked, like you said. I'm just wondering now, when you start cooking for your family this food, how do you like, how would I say, how do you culturize them, or rather like teach them how to like get used to eating crunchy food, or what do you do? What are the tricks?
Well, I can use the same experience I had. What happened is, of course, by gaining knowledge and experience on cooking, I had to dwell, of course, in eating out a lot. Yeah. So what happened is I tried different cuisines I tried different dishes rather from different cuisines. Okay. And basically by trying different ingredients every now and then, trying out different dishes, you actually become accustomed to enjoying them as they're served crunchy. So the only trick in convincing anyone to enjoy the vegetables as they are is basically by doing it more often. Okay. So maybe not do it in a bulk kind of system whereby you kind of force them to eat as you've cooked. Yeah. Maybe have maybe some par-grilled vegetables on the side, maybe accompanying your dinner dish. Yeah. Let them try and give you feedback, and then maybe try and experiment slowly. So experimenting is pretty much the easiest way.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Right, so now we're going to proceed to take this out. Okay. I'm also going to turn the heat off completely. And of course, while Megan does so, this will of course give us just enough time to begin to cook our pasta. So the desired size should actually be the pasta that I'm holding on my hand. It should actually be almost just slightly longer than your longest finger. And you can achieve this very, very simply by holding the pasta very, very upright on your board, making sure that all the sticks or all the pasta is pretty much almost on the same level once you tap it on the board. And what you'll proceed to do is basically break this 3 ways. So almost a third way into your pasta, proceed to shatter that into the sizes that you desire. And of course, with the remaining bit of the pasta, all you need to do is proceed to break those into half. And all you need to do now is pretty much throw this into some boiling water. Right, so what we're going to do is we're going to add some salt to our water. This is of course to make sure that the pasta is not very, very bland. And I also like to add a small dash of oil. This is also to make sure that the pasta is nicely, it actually separates very, very easily.
Okay.
And all we're going to do is throw that in there, and we'll allow that to cook for about 6 to 7 minutes. Then we'll take it out and then drain it under some running water.
Ah,
Yeah.
so why rinse the pasta?
No, it's not actually rinsing. It's actually, what we're going to be doing is cooling it off. This is to stop it from continuous cooking.
Okay.
So yes, so what happens is on most occasions you may take ingredients out of the element that you use to cook them in, but because whatever they came out of is still maybe hot.
Yeah.
What happens is they may continue to cook. But once you cool them under running water, just like you do for steamed veggies, it stops them from continuous cooking, and it actually manages to keep the crispness still intact. Okay. Yeah. Right, that's very, very beautiful grilling. So ladies and gentlemen, the process starts as simple as that. All you need to do is grill your vegetables, allow them to cool off, and we're of course going to now go into the next step of assembling the rest. But we are of course going to take a very small break while we allow our pasta to cook. But when we do come back, I will take you through the process of finishing off your pasta, combining it with the rest of your ingredients, and of course assembling your salad from scratch. So please don't touch that dial. We'll see you in a little bit.
Indeed, some people, or rather actually the majority of the people, would hate to eat this raw. You know? Like, what do you do to it so that it can lose their bit of, you know,
that nuttiness and
yes, and the bitterness.
The bitterness from
yes,
it.
Yes.
The beautiful addition of semi-cooked or even raw vegetables to a meal can only be harmful to you if you of course don't take enough precaution in cleaning it well. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. If you're just getting the time to tune into our show this evening, you've not missed out on so much. We've pretty much only started on the very, very basics of the grilling process of the vegetables that we're going to be incorporating into our salad. But we're of course now going to jump into the next step. Of course, as for those of you who are with us before the break, we also boiled our pasta. It's also now rinsed off and cooling off on the end. Now we're going to, of course, jump into the last and final cooking process, which is, of course, the cooking of the protein. So for this, I'm going to begin by unwrapping our chicken breast. Also, very, very important to pat that down, make sure that it doesn't have any particular blood or any particular fluids. So begin by tapping it very, very lightly with some serviette or some kitchen towel. Proceed to turn that over and repeat to do the same on the other end. And very, very simply proceed to turn that over, peeling very, very gently, making sure, of course, not to leave any traces of your serviettes on the meat, of course. And all you need to do at this stage is proceed to grill your meat. So I'll begin the process by adding a bit of oil to a hot pan. And of course, we're also going to be grilling the onions that we'll be using for the salad. So I'm going to be using 2 sides for this. Okay. But before we add our chicken in, very, very important that we season this. So I'm just going to slide it into a bowl, and I'll use the same mixed spices we had a little earlier.
Okay. So why are you grilling the onions now together with the chicken, or rather? Why are you grilling the onions now?
No, it's not actually grilling them with the chicken.
Okay.
The idea is basically to grill them just before we serve so that we can still have them
Okay.
holding shape, and so that they don't actually go soft on us before we plate.
Oh, okay.
So this is pretty much the last ingredient that I would grill just to basically use to garnish my salad with.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, so proceed to toss your chicken in a bit of your seasoning. Very important to also mention, if you're going to be serving this around any kids, very important to make sure also not to incorporate any particular chilies for this dish. It could actually be quite hot and very hard to enjoy. And of course, once coated, proceed to move your chicken breast onto your hot pan. And we're basically going to allow that to continue grilling undisturbed. And while we do so, should give us just enough minutes to begin our dressing. So Megan, I'm going to hand you these two tools, and we're going to make a very, very simple vinaigrette for this.
Okay.
So I'm going to begin by adding about 30 milliliters of apple cider vinegar.
All right.
I'm also going to add about 1 tablespoon of some lemon juice. And last but not least, a bit of some olive oil. So we're going to measure out about 2.5 tablespoons. That should give you just enough vinaigrette for one salad.
So for the apple cider vinegar, when you're preparing a meal for someone with like an acidity issue, or what would you use in the alternative?
I would go with lemon juice, and you can go with any. Yeah, lemon juice and olive oil, you should be very okay.
Okay.
But in case you're able to use the two, there's a very, very beautiful richness in flavor in using fresh and a bit of the store-bought vinegar.
Okay.
They actually create a very, very beautiful balance.
Okay.
Right, now to that, once it's almost creamy, season with a bit of some crushed black peppercorns and a bit of some salt. Perfect, that's done. So pretty much we only whisk it till it's almost creamy in color. If you can be able to see that from the cameras, it should almost look like a whipped egg yolk. Yeah? So as soon as you get to this stage, you can actually stop there.
Right.
And now next up, we'll begin to incorporate the rest of our ingredients.
Okay.
So I'm going to add my
This
sweet
is
corn.
boiled. Is it boiled or?
Yeah, this is basically the canned variety. So if you're of course going to be using the fresh corn, the fresh sweet corn rather, you can of course peel the corn, steam them basically for about 4 to 5 minutes, and then cool them in some ice water.
Okay.
But if you can of course, if you're also looking at cutting the process of doing all this, you can actually just get a can of some kerneled corn.
So why cool in ice water? Is the sweet corn only sweet when it's cold?
No. The ice water is, of course, to make sure that your corn, the skins of the corn don't begin to peel off.
Okay.
So it keeps the corn very intact,
Okay.
and it actually maintains the look, the original look. So it basically
yellow.
looks almost very, 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 very fresh,
Okay.
like it almost came straight off the cob.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So in goes our corn. I'm also going to be adding about 2 peaches to this recipe. So I'll begin by slicing those into quarters, and the peaches as well, you can be able to find this canned.
Yeah.
It of course is a bit challenging to find fresh peaches in the country,
Yeah.
and they also come at a very high cost.
Yeah.
And another thing I like for the purpose of finding tinned peaches is basically for the fact that they also won't go off if you keep them too long in your refrigerator. Yeah. Right, so in goes our peaches and our corn. So to that, we're also going to incorporate some cherry tomatoes. So I'm just going to slice those into halves.
So can you use this for cooking? The
Yeah,
tomatoes?
you can actually use them for cooking, but I would insist maybe not to cook, maybe not for very, very long processes of cooking. maybe if you're making a very light sauce with it, or if you're just incorporating it to a dish.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that they also cook, they kind of blister and break down very quickly.
Yeah.
I would say if you're going to be using them, add them towards the very end.
Okay.
Yeah. Right, so into that, we're also going to be adding some fresh coriander.
All right. But now, you know, like I was telling you earlier, some people, or rather, actually, the majority of the people would hate to eat this raw. You know, like what do you do to it so that it can lose their bit of, you know,
that nuttiness.
Yes, and the bitterness.
The bitterness
yes,
from it.
Yes.
Now, the idea behind using this for this particular recipe, because of the fact that you may consider it raw at the stage it's in right now, but what happens is once we incorporate the dressing, it's actually going to blend into one flavor, being that we also mixed it with the rest of the ingredients.
Okay.
So basically the saltiness from the corn, the sweetness from the peaches, that basically confuses the palate. So you'll basically be able to overcome that sharpness of the coriander.
Okay.
So the idea is, of course, if you're going to be using it raw, don't add it directly onto the dish. Maybe coat it or toss it in the meal that you're going to be using it with. Then it's, of course, going to lose a bit of its potency.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So basically the idea behind this is, being that we're going to be tossing this in a bit of dressing, everything is all going to almost blend into one flavor. Yeah. Right, so into that goes about 2 tablespoons of some freshly chopped coriander.
Has a very beautiful look now.
And now you see the color
There's all
starts
the
to stick
colors,
out. Yeah? Right. Now to that, we're also going to add our cooled off vegetables that we had actually grilled a little earlier. So as I mentioned, it's actually a very common, it's actually a salad that you may commonly find being done maybe by farm dwellers or people who can actually make meals with ingredients straight from the ground. And one beautiful thing about doing it that way is basically you always encompass the belief and the tradition of keeping things fresh right through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now to that, we're also going to add a bit of some spring onion. So for this, I like to trim off the crown of the stem. And of course, also be sure to trim off the edges next to the root. And this, all you need to do is maybe, if you're looking at them from this angle, just hold them almost diagonally. And what you're going to do is you're going to just chop those into a bit of a shape. So as you can see, it gives it a bit of a different look.
Yes.
So this is basically why I was saying this is basically just to add a bit of color and appeal to your salad.
Okay.
Remember also another thing is a salad that doesn't really have much creativity into it looks very boring and bland. We're just going to turn those over and allow that to cook off on the second side. And while we do so, I'm also going to begin to grill our onion rings. So I'm just going to move those onto our grill just to be able to get those beautiful char marks. Drizzle just a little bit of oil over the top. And of course, very, very importantly, being that onions also have a bit of pungency to them, a bit of salt also helps to extract those bits of juices. It actually brings the juices to the surface. And it's also going to give the onions a nice, beautiful coloring. Right, now pretty much most of the ingredients are done. As I mentioned, very important that the ingredients you start with, of course, cooled off. Now we are going to add a bit of our pasta. So you can grab our pasta. Yeah, we're going to add that in here. So I'm just going to add a nice handful in there. And what I like to do is add it in little bits. This, of course, makes sure that you're not going to have too much. And also that the salad actually manages to balance in appearance. And I'm also going to incorporate a bit of our dressing at this stage. So as you can see, it brings about a very different color. You actually don't pay too much attention to the pasta. Yep.
It actually, at the end of it, it looks like it's actual food. Like
it actually looks like a meal.
It's a meal, actually.
Exactly.
It's a meal.
Yep. I'm just going to give that a quick look. That should be about a minute away.
So how long when you're grilling, how fast does chicken cook when you're grilling it?
On a grill such as this one, for the size that I have, should take about 4 minutes on each side, bringing it to 8 minutes in total.
So, and if I was to cook it in an oven?
If you're going to cook it in an oven, the oven, of course, depends on the temperature.
Okay.
So if you're using maybe a standard temperature of about 180, about 20-25 minutes.
Okay.
So as I mentioned, the skillet does really save quite a bit of time.
Yeah.
It actually almost breaks the time by a third.
Yeah.
Yep.
It looks awesome.
And it looks good. Right, now, as we of course come towards the close of this dish, as I mentioned, always begin by making sure what is mixed cold stays cold. What is going to be served hot comes probably right at the top of your salad, or maybe accompanying the salad. You can of course chop those up and maybe serve them right at the top. It will of course not ruin the texture of the dish in total, and it will of course also not create that imbalance of hot and cold in one consistent meal. Now, since these are almost done, we'll proceed to turn that off. And as I mentioned, another beautiful thing with the skillet, it holds so much heat that you can actually turn it off, and it may actually continue to cook even another portion. Okay. Yeah. Right, so next up we're going to begin to plate. I'm just going to add a little bit more dressing in there. Right now, ladies and gentlemen, we have of course come towards the end of this very, very simple salad for today. As I mentioned, a very, very good alternative to a very lazy day of cooking at home. Also something that really encompasses around ingredients that also are very available. I think you can second me when I say these are not hard to find.
These are not hard to find. They're very simple. It's
Very,
the
very simple.
everyday
It's the everyday
interaction
shopping
kind of
basket
things that
kind
you
of
find.
thing. Exactly.
Yeah, just
exactly.
this now gives you, what I love about what we have just done is that there is just a new trick on how to go about using the same ingredients that you interact with every day to come up with something spectacular like this
Exactly.
salad.
Perfect. Well said. Now, we'll of course begin the plating process very, very simply. Now, we're now going to come up to begin our plating. And very, very importantly, as I said, always begin with the ingredients that are bulkier.
Okay.
And such ingredients such as your chicken and your onion rings, you can always use those to just create a bit of a decoration at the top of the dish. So I'm going to begin by moving this spoon out of the way. And I'm also going to show you this. I don't know if you've worked with this before.
Nope. No.
Not at
I
all.
have seen it, but I have not worked with it.
Now, one thing about this spoon, it's actually designed to enable you to pull pasta out of the water.
Oh.
So if you have maybe like penne pasta, the ones are about half a finger size, the chunkier ones, you can be able to scoop this out with.
Okay.
And same thing for spaghetti if you're cooking them very long.
Okay.
You can actually be able to hold the spaghetti with this. And what happens is the teeth that are basically at the top of the spoon enable for you to hold the pasta.
Okay.
And it can actually drain very, very slowly before you
I'll
remove.
get one now for my kitchen.
But it also doubles up also for serving the pasta. So just the way you can use it to take out the pasta from the water, same way you can actually be able to use it to plate. So as I can show you, for instance, if you maybe wanted to get a bit of all the ingredients with the pasta, you basically just build a bit of weight from the bottom. So this is basically just bundling it up. Okay. And once you lift, what happens is it can actually it
holds everything
together.
Wow.
And that's the beautiful aspect of this.
I saw this spoon. I have seen it before.
Now you know what it's used
now I know what it's for.
Exactly.
You know, we had not met, but now we have met. We'll definitely have a relationship with this.
That's true. Right, now as we continue to serve, I'm also going to just pull the courgettes to the side. Remember, as I mentioned, it's also about the visual.
Yes.
So you definitely want the ingredients that you put more effort to show off.
Yes.
Make sure that they always stick out. So you can achieve that very, very simply by moving them around with a pair of tongs as you plate. And you can be able to do this even at the end of the process. Okay. So that should be a good portion for one. So I'll stop you there. Okay. Simple as that. Then another thing very important as well to make sure is that all the ingredients we used are visible to the eye. Can you be able to depict all of them?
Yes, I can see the peach, I can see the onion,
Exactly.
I can see the cherry tomatoes, I can see the pasta, the sweet corn, and I can see the red pepper. I think I've mentioned, and I can see the dania.
The coriander,
The
yes.
coriander,
The
yes,
coriander.
thank you.
So as I
can see the
mentioned,
coriander.
yes, so as I was mentioning, the most important thing about a salad is it's just not only with the presentation and the flavor, it's also the look. So if you can be able to look at this plate from afar, the colors are already enticing.
Drawing you near, and you
drawing
just
you
want
near.
to munch on.
And this is the one tip that I can share with you, especially as you said, when you're trying new things or when you're experimenting meals with the diners at home. Try different techniques of making the food look nice. So like, as I mentioned, the ingredients that went into this are not hard to source.
Yes.
But how we chop them, how they vary in size and shape, that's basically also another thing that really draws you and makes your mouth water. Because now you can see a nice big chunk of peach, but then you can see some little bits and pieces of corn. So it really draws your attention to trying it.
So in short, when you're doing the salad, it's more of your creativity on how you go about preparing the vegetables and how the final outlook.
Exactly, and even how you use your knife. Because remember, as we started in the beginning, when I told you this is pretty much the most handiest tool for a chef. It's because without the knife, you may not be able to get all the characteristics of the shapes. So you can have cooked the peppers in a different shape, the courgette could have been chopped a little different, but it all came from the use of your knife. So this is pretty much what has made it so much easier for you to make it look a little more appealing. Right, so once that is done, we're just going to reserve this on the side, and we'll proceed to check on our chicken. So I'm just going to begin by taking those off the pan, followed by the onions rather. So as I mentioned, a beautiful charring effect on our onion rings. So I'm just going to proceed to slice the chicken just to be able to show you the inside. As you can see, it's not pink, beautifully cooked through. So that I'm going to just slice into some nice sizable chunks. As I mentioned as well, it's not a very wise idea to chop up everything in a salad so tiny. Always leave a bit of chunks because that's the beauty of enjoying a salad. And all you need to do now is just scatter those right over the top of your salad. Doesn't have any particular fashion, but of course covering as much room on your plate is always the desired effect. I can just bundle those at the center, and very, very simply begin by, you can just lift the core of the onion so that normally it's the very, very tiny ones that you can't really be able to see. And all you can do now is pretty much just lay your onions right over the top like that. And as I mentioned, it's a very, very effortless way of decorating a salad or any particular dish.
Okay, but the onions are edible.
The onions are edible, yeah. Actually, you can try some of that and see. I'll actually let you bite into that.
Nice.
Good, yeah?
Very nice.
So try also a piece of chicken. Just go for it, go for it.
Wow, they marry very well. They have a very rich taste in my mouth right now.
So you can actually now be able to see the effect I was telling you. And now for the last and final.
I also feel a bit of the spice.
Exactly.
You know, I'm on a journey here with my taste buds. It is
now,
very,
of course, very importantly, I will, of course, ask you to taste the salad as well. So I'm going to give you a very, very small spoon here to try with. So I'm going to allow you to give that a taste. I want you to feel that marriage between the salty, the sweet. So you actually see where everything fits in now.
Yes, there's a sweet taste, there's a cherry tomato with and I can taste the coriander.
But it's not as sharp as you mentioned a little earlier. So now, as I mentioned, through the process of mixing ingredients in a bowl, allowing them to sit for a few minutes, that is basically where the flavor is built, even for salads. So the trick was just that much that we used. I pretty much started by adding ingredients little by little, just to allow for everything to blend into a flavor that's very constant and precise. Then a little bit of drizzling of some dressing, and that's all you need to worry about.
So when like the vegetables, everything is together, they kind of have like an exchange of some sort.
Exactly.
So there's some would say like per se there's some cooking going on
Exactly.
of its kind.
Exactly.
Once it's like sitting right there.
Exactly.
So it's key for you to leave your salad to sit for a while.
Yeah, it's actually one particular technique that I've used on many occasions. I actually mix all the ingredients for the salad, maybe not the leafy ones that may actually collapse, especially the ones that will collapse a little faster. I leave those out because of the fact that there is a bit of citrusiness and there's lemon juice. It's of course going to make your vegetables collapse very quickly.
Okay.
So what I do is I mix the ingredients first, let them sit in a bowl. Then add your vinaigrette, toss it a little bit, leave it on the side again, and then now combine the last and final ones, which is basically the fresh bits and pieces that don't need any particular cooking.
Okay.
Add those last so that they can actually be able to be absorbed much faster, and that way they actually lose they actually lose their strength of the strength in their flavor a little quicker.
Okay. Can I incorporate like a beef in these?
Yes, actually.
Fish.
Yes, very, very important to
Tuna.
mention. There is not any meat that will not go with
But how
any
would
salad.
I go about the tuna? Especially the
tuna,
shredded tuna.
if you're
Do
going
I
to-
still grill it or what?
No, if you're going to be using, well, I know we don't really get fresh tuna in the country.
Yes.
So with the tinned varieties that we get, all you need to do is drain it, just tear it, or rather just break it down into some small chunks.
Okay.
Toss it with the vinaigrette, and then you can basically add a little bit over the top, or you can toss it with the salad together.
Okay.
So for instance, as you mentioned, for cuts such as meat, you can grill your meat, slice it right at the end, place it right over the top. It's very okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. It's fantastic. It looks beautiful, by the way. I would not
Perfect.
have put together grilled meat.
Pasta
with-
and raw and cooked
Yes,
vegetables
and
together.
salad, by the way. I would
And
not have.
fruit. So
No,
as you
but
can
maybe
see,
a
we've
bit of-
pretty much added everything in there.
Yes.
There is meat, there is vegetables, there
This
is
is
starch.
ideally a meal.
It is, and
is
as you
actually
can
a
see,
meal.
it's also a no-fuss meal, as I mentioned.
Yeah.
You didn't cook everything that's in there.
Yes.
And anything that you did cook did not take you more than 5 minutes.
Yeah.
The pasta actually, maybe the chicken and the pasta cooked the longest. So this is, of course, the reason why I always say you can actually be creative, even in the smallest span of time, even when making a very, very simple dinner such as this one. And as I said, also to mention with the viewers at home, most of these ingredients you can be able to buy in advance. Most of us actually have that array of ingredients probably in our pantries at home or in the fridge at home. And it's also a very, very good way of getting rid of vegetables, especially when you're trying to think, okay, wait, I have one zucchini, but I can't really make anything with it. Throw it into a salad. Now, as I was mentioning earlier, by using different leftover vegetables in the fridge, it actually also aids you in creating your own recipes at times, because you may, of course, remember this exact salad once you get home, but you may find that you have mangoes instead of peaches, maybe you have cucumber instead of zucchini. The idea behind any salad is just a main component. Just make sure that anything that is raw is fully cooked. Anything that you can half cook, maybe cook it as you would. Keep your vegetables crunchy. Make sure the dressing is not dry. And very, very importantly, always, for those of you at home, always make sure you have a bit of dressing left over. I've actually, it has happened to me in the past that someone asked for an extra serving of salad, but my dressing was totally out. So this is for the reason why we were adding a little bit into the salad, so that the salad is still incorporating the flavors, even without you having to have that extra portion of vinaigrette on the side. Yeah. So Megan, have I managed to convince you on the show today that salads are the new way to go?
Salads are the new way to go. No, I actually have quite a taste for raw vegetables and what have you. In fact, I try as much as in my own meals at home. I try as much as not to cook my vegetables, to have them crunchy, and I try to at least, try and have as much of that. Yeah, at least 3/4 of my meal I try to make it vegetable.
And as I mentioned, even for those of you at home, the beautiful addition of semi-cooked or even raw vegetables to a meal can only be harmful to you if you, of course, don't take enough precaution in cleaning it well. Very importantly, something I can also share with the viewers at home and for you as well. For vegetables that you may be tempted to chop up in their raw form, be sure to actually soak your vegetables in the sink. And I use a very, very simple technique. I use 1 tablespoon of vinegar to 1 liter of water.
Okay.
So all you need to do is get a container or maybe just block your sink. But I prefer to use a container because the sink is also not 100% clean. So maybe use a big bowl such as this one. Measure out 1 tablespoon vinegar to each cup of water. Let your vegetables sit in there, not chopped, in their raw form.
Yeah.
The vinegar will actually eat out the bacteria, and by consuming your vegetables, and do it the same for your lettuce as well.
Okay.
In this way, even any particular worms that are in there, they'll actually cook away. And even if they're not noticeable to the naked eye, it will, of course, make sure that you sterilized your vegetables before serving.
Okay, so when I'm done with the water and the vinegar, actually that's what I do as well. I also learned the other day. Do I just leave them and just serve them the way they are, or
No,
do I need to rinse again the vegetables?
No, what you do is rinse them first in regular water,
Okay.
then soak them in the solution,
Okay.
and then just take them out and dry them, and then you
serve
can
them
chop
like
and
that.
serve.
So
So because what happens is by rinsing them again after the soaking process, you're actually going to wash out the whole process. So it's basically like going back to the beginning. So be sure to make sure, so the first process is to make sure that you remove any bits of sand or any worms. Then the soaking process is to kill any bacteria or any pesticides that could be on the surface of the vegetables. And then by drying them, this is basically straight to the plate.
Okay, so at this point, the way you are describing that, at least to make sure that your vegetables are 100% clean, you need vinegar. Seems now vinegar is like a mandatory
No, it is
item in your
exactly,
kitchen, and you have to have like the big one, like the big one, because you're going to be doing a lot
doing
of
it more
cleaning.
and more.
Do you do the same with fruits?
Yes, with fruits I actually use bleach.
Okay.
So you can, of course, using the same quantity, tablespoon to a liter, you can use bleach and water mixture to soak your fruits in.
Okay.
And this you can do maybe on the day that you bring them in straight from the market.
Okay.
So wash them under the sink, some running water, not still water, running water.
Okay.
Soak them in the solution and then just leave them in a fruit basket.
Okay.
That way, even if you actually were in a hurry to just maybe grab an apple and bite into it, you're sure that you're safe every time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful.
Right. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope our episode this evening has been empowering, and I hope you've also managed to learn something new as Megan has on the show. I do, of course, also look forward to hearing back from you. So do remember to send us your comments, feedback, suggestions, compliments, any particular thing that could make this show any better than it already is. Do feel free to write back to us through our Facebook page. That's BrandPlus TV Kenya. And if you haven't subscribed already, do subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. That's BrandPlus TV Kenya. You will, of course, be able to recap on this and many more beautiful recipes to try out at home. But Megan, you're of course going to do us the honor of closing the show by reminding the guests how to be part of our show in the near future.
Okay. Yeah. For you to be part of the show, all you need to do is just send your 2 names to the number on your screen, and also like give a brief description of who you are or what it is that you like to do, and maybe you can also give like a suggestion or like a meal you'd like to know how to cook, and just send that SMS and they will get back to you.
Thank you very much, Megan. Thank you once again, viewers, for tuning in this far. Do remain blessed, and until the next episode, be blessed once more, and see you soon.